thousands gathered in Washington, D.C. for a Memorial Day air show, expecting a celebration of America's strength in the sky. But when a state-of-the-art F-22 Raptor suddenly began to fall from the heavens, the crowd knew they were seconds away from witnessing disaster. The pilot was trapped, the systems failed, and the nation held its breath. What nobody expected was that salvation would come not from the control tower, but from a forgotten veteran in the crowd, one arm missing, but carrying knowledge no one else remembered. Let's dive into this unbelievable, true-to-life drama right here on Life Moral Tales. The Memorial Day sun stretched across the National Mall in Washington, D.C., bathing thousands of faces in golden light. Flags rippled in the breeze, brass bands played patriotic hymns, and families gathered with a mixture of pride and grief. Children waved miniature stars and stripes, while veterans, some in uniform, some in wheelchairs, watched with solemn eyes. To most, it was a holiday of remembrance, a celebration of service. But to Major Nyasha Wright, it was something else entirely. Standing near the back of the crowd, she blended easily into the sea of spectators. A faded Air Force bomber jacket draped her shoulders, its left sleeve pinned neatly where her arm had once been. Afghanistan had taken that limb, and with it, the career she had built in the skies. Once, she had flown the most advanced aircraft in the world, the F-22 Raptor. Now, she lived quietly, far from bases and headlines. No one around her knew her name. To them, she was just another face. But her eyes told a different story. Dark, sharp, and unblinking, they followed every streak of jet exhaust in the sky above. The crowd gasped at the thunder of engines, children squealed in delight. But Nyasha didn't smile. She calculated, she measured, she read the skies like an old book, every maneuver etched into her memory from years in the cockpit. When the national anthem swelled, the mall became a living wave of voices. Hands pressed to hearts, hats were removed, salutes rose in unison. Nyasha mouthed the words, but no sound left her lips. She had sung this song in a flight suit, helmet tucked under her arm, moments before launching into combat. Today, it felt heavier, as if the notes carried the weight of every comrade who hadn't come back. Her gaze drifted across the crowd, families clutching photographs, children with painted faces, veterans decorated with medals. Pride and grief intermingled everywhere she looked, and she felt both in equal measure. The announcer's voice cut through the music, booming with energy. "Ladies and gentlemen, prepare your eyes for the pride of American air power, the Lockheed Martin F-22 Raptor." The roar came instantly. Cheers, whistles, applause. All eyes turned skyward. Nyasha's breath caught as the sleek jet shot into view, sunlight glinting off its wings. For a moment, it was as if she were back in the cockpit, the stick trembling in her grip, the roar of engines under her control. She could almost feel the pressure of G-forces pressing her into her seat, the taste of adrenaline sharp on her tongue. But she wasn't in the sky anymore. She was grounded, scarred, forgotten. She exhaled, her lips tightening into a thin line. "Not my world anymore," she told herself. And yet, as the jet climbed higher, slicing into a vertical maneuver that drew wild cheers from the crowd, Nyasha's instincts whispered otherwise, because she had flown that exact move before. She knew its beauty, she knew its danger, and deep inside, something stirred, a cold certainty she hadn't felt in years. The Raptor sliced across the sky like a silver arrow, its twin engines roaring as it climbed almost straight into the sun. The crowd on the mall erupted in awe, their cheers echoing off the monuments. Only 24 years old, ladies and gentlemen, the announcer boomed through the loudspeakers. Second Lieutenant Jacob Miller, one of the youngest pilots in the U.S. Air Force, is at the controls of the F-22 Raptor today. Applause thundered. Children pointed skyward. Veterans saluted with pride. On the big screen set around the mall, Jacob's helmeted face appeared. Calm, focused, the perfect image of a young pilot living his dream. The jet banked hard, rolled in a tight spiral, then snapped into a cobra maneuver. Its nose pitched sharply upward, belly exposed to the crowd before snapping level again. Gasps rippled through the audience, followed by wild cheers. But one person didn't cheer. Naisha Wright's jaw clenched as she watched. She knew the Cobra well. It was flashy, designed to impress, but also unforgiving. The Raptor could handle it, yes, but only if every variable played perfectly. Any slip, any fault, and disaster struck fast. Her gut twisted. She had flown this maneuver before. She knew the razor-thin line between awe and catastrophe. For a moment, everything seemed fine. Jacob steadied the jet, pulling into another climb. The crowd roared louder. Then, without warning, it happened. A cough from the engine. A plume of black smoke burst from the left side. The Raptor jolted violently, wobbling in the air like a bird with a broken wing. The cheers died instantly. Silence swept the mall. On the big screens, Jacob's voice cracked through the comms, tight with alarm. "Control, this is Miller. Engine 1 failure. I repeat, Engine 1 is out." The stall warning blared in his headset, the sound chilling even through the speakers. Stall, stall, stall. Jacob gritted his teeth, yanking the stick, but the jet barely responded. The Raptor tilted, dropping altitude fast. "Control, I'm losing response. Flight surfaces unresponsive." His words dissolved into static. Panic rippled through the crowd. Parents pulled their children close, shielding their eyes. A woman screamed. A man shouted, "It's going down!" People began to push back from the flight line, stumbling over blankets and folding chairs. Inside his cockpit, Jacob fought desperately. His chest heaved under the pressure, his breaths ragged. Sweat stung his eyes as alarm screamed around him. He yanked the ejection handle, once, twice, 3 times. Nothing. "Control, ejection unresponsive. I can't get out." The words cracked over the channel, raw with terror. In the control tent, officers froze. Faces went pale. Colonel Harris barked into his headset. "Confirm that. Did he say the seat's locked?" "Confirmed, sir," a technician replied, his voice shaking. "Ejection system offline." A heavy silence fell. Everyone in that tent knew what that meant. Jacob Miller was trapped. On the mall, hysteria spread. Children cried, people screamed, some dropped to the ground as the jet dipped lower, smoke trailing behind it. Emergency sirens wailed in the distance as fire trucks and ambulances barreled toward the field. Naisha stood rigid, her eyes fixed on the Raptor. Her body trembled, not with fear, but with memory. Afghanistan, 2014. Her own cockpit shaking violently, the stick dead in her hands. Alarm screaming, stall, engine failure. Her wingman's voice in her ear, "Eject, Naisha, eject!" And then silence as his jet exploded in flames. She pressed her lips together, her throat tight. The phantom ache of her missing arm pulsed with every beat of her heart. The jet above wobbled again, dipping so low that the crowd screamed in unison. A child cried out, "Mommy, he's going to crash!" Naisha whispered under her breath, voice low and fierce, "Hold on, kid, don't you quit!" But deep down she knew, without help he wouldn't make it, and the entire nation was about to watch him die.
Inside the Air Force command tent, the atmosphere had turned electric with panic. Alarms shrieked from every console, bathing the room in pulsing red light. Dozens of officers crowded over screens, their hands flying across keyboards, their voices colliding in a chaotic storm. Engine 1 completely offline. Stabilizers frozen. No manual response. Colonel Harris, face taut with fury and fear, slammed a fist onto the main console. "Overwrite it! Get me control back now!" A young technician shouted, his voice breaking. "Sir, we've tried every override channel. The system's locked out. It's rejecting everything." "Then try harder," Harris barked. "We are not losing a Raptor over Washington." But deep down, even Harris could see the truth. Every modern protocol had failed. The jet was unresponsive, spiraling lower over the heart of the Capitol. On the big monitor, Jacob Miller's face filled the feed. His helmet was fogged with sweat, his eyes wild as he fought the useless stick. His voice cracked over the comms. "Control! I can't! She's not responding! I've lost flight surfaces!" "Eject!" an officer shouted into the mic. "Eject now, Lieutenant!" Jacob's reply hit the room like a hammer. "Negative. The ejection seat is offline. I'm trapped." A heavy silence fell. Officers stared at each other, the weight of those words sinking in. If the seat was dead, Jacob had no way out. He was chained to a falling coffin. Colonel Harris's jaw tightened. "God help him," he muttered. Outside, the panic mirrored the tent. On the National Mall, thousands of people surged backward, their cheers replaced with screams. Parents clutched their children, dragging them away. Picnic blankets and strollers were abandoned. Some people dropped flat onto the grass, hands over their heads as the wounded jet shrieked overhead. A woman sobbed uncontrollably, clutching a folded American flag against her chest. A veteran in a wheelchair saluted silently, tears cutting down his weathered cheeks. Children screamed, covering their ears against the roar. And yet, some could not look away. Their eyes stayed fixed on the jet, circling lower and lower, as if they knew they were witnessing history, one way or another. For Nyasha Wright, the chaos blurred into background noise. Her gaze never left the Raptor. Her body trembled, her breath shallow, her phantom arm aching as if the flames of Kandahar still licked at it. She had been here before, locked in a cockpit, alarms screaming, no way out. She had survived, barely. Her wingman had not. And now she was watching a boy live her nightmare in real time. Her throat tightened as Jacob's broken voice crackled again. "Control? Tell my mom I love her." The feed cut with static. Gasps rippled through the crowd outside. Some people screamed. Others clasped their hands together, praying aloud. One child cried out, "Is he gonna die?" Yasha's jaw clenched. Her heart pounded. She knew what everyone else in that tent refused to admit. The modern system was useless. They could hammer keys until their fingers bled, and the jet would still fall. Because the answer wasn't in the new code. It was buried in the old one, the one she still remembered. Above, the Raptor shrieked through the sky, wobbling, trailing smoke, dipping lower with each pass. The crowd screamed with each swoop, ducking as if the jet might plow into them at any moment. Inside the tent, officers shouted over one another, fighting a losing battle. The clock ticked mercilessly toward impact. And through it all, Yasha stood frozen, her eyes burning, her lips moving silently. "Not again," she thought. "Not while I'm here."
The roar of the failing Raptor tore across the mall again, rattling windows, shaking the ground. Thousands of people screamed and ducked for cover. Some prayed. Some simply stared, frozen in horror. But Nyasha Wright did not move. Her gaze stayed locked on the jet, her face tight, her body trembling, not with fear, but with fury. She had seen this before. She had lived this before, and she would not watch it happen again. She pushed through the crowd, Parents pulled children away. Police shouted orders, but Nyasha shoved past them all, her bomber jacket flaring, her empty sleeve swinging at her side. She cut toward the barricade, where 2 security guards struggled to hold back terrified civilians. "Ma'am, you need to step back," one of them barked, raising an arm to block her. Nyasha's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and commanding. "I need to get inside. I flew that jet. I can save him." The guards exchanged a look, half confusion, half disbelief. To them, she looked like any other frantic bystander. "I said step back," the guard repeated. Nyasha leaned in, her eyes blazing. "Listen to me. I was an F-22 pilot. I know that system. The codes you're using won't work. Let me in or that boy dies right in front of you." The words hit like a slap. The guards froze, uncertain. Overhead, the jet screamed again, wobbling low enough to draw a collective cry from the crowd. One mother sobbed, clutching her son as if the world were ending. Nyasha jabbed her finger skyward. "Every second you waste arguing, he gets closer to the ground. Do you want his blood on your conscience?" One guard hesitated, lifting his radio. "Command, we've got—" Inside the tent, Colonel Harris spun at the sound of the transmission. "A woman outside says she flew Raptors, claims she knows the system." He looked toward the clear plastic wall of the tent and froze. There she was, Nyasha Wright. For a moment, the colonel couldn't breathe. He knew that face. Everyone in the Air Force had once known it, the woman who had cheated death in Kandahar, the survivor, the ghost. "My God," he whispered. "Sir?" an officer asked. Harris's eyes hardened. "It's her, Major Wright." The room shifted. Some officers gawked, others frowned. "Sir, we can't just— she's not cleared anymore." "Do you have a better idea? Because unless you've got a miracle in your back pocket, that kid has less than 2 minutes to live." Silence fell. Then Harris grabbed his radio. "Let her in." The barricade dropped. Nyasha strode forward, her boots pounding the pavement, her steps steady and unyielding. She entered the tent, and the atmosphere changed instantly. The officers, frantic seconds before, froze. Eyes widened, hands stilled over keyboards. For a moment, even the alarms seemed quieter. Colonel Harris stepped forward, his expression caught between awe and desperation. "Nyasha Wright, I thought we'd lost you." Nyasha met his gaze, her own voice stripped of hesitation. "You will lose him if you don't move aside. Show me the console." An officer sputtered. "Sir, with respect, she doesn't have clearance." "She has more clearance than all of you," Harris snapped. His voice cracked like a whip. Nyasha stepped to the console. Her empty sleeve brushed the table as she leaned in, her right hand hovering over the keys. For a heartbeat, she closed her eyes, hearing the roar of Kandahar, the scream of her wingman, the fire that had stolen her arm. Then she opened them, steady and sharp. "Patch me into his cockpit," she ordered. The technician obeyed, fingers flying. The line opened. Jacob's ragged voice burst through the static. "Control, I can't— she's dropping. Please." Nyasha's voice cut through, strong and commanding. "Lieutenant Miller, this is Major Nyasha Wright. I've got you. Do exactly as I say." The room fell silent. Officers stared, stunned. And in the cockpit, Jacob froze, breath catching at the name. Who are you?" he stammered. "Doesn't matter. Do you want to live? Then listen." Her fingers slammed the first sequence. The console blinked, ancient code spilling across the screen. The battle had begun.
The command tent seemed to hold its breath. Officers crowded around, eyes darting between the failing jet on the big screen and the one-armed woman who had just seized the console. Nyasha Wright's right hand flew across the keyboard. She wasn't searching through menus or protocols like the technicians had been doing. She was cutting straight into the bones of the Raptor's system, the old architecture buried under years of upgrades. Lines of forgotten code scrolled across the screen, glowing pale green against the red of the alarms. "Lieutenant Miller," she said into the mic, her voice crisp and unwavering. "I'm opening a legacy channel. Your jet will feel different, rough, unstable, but it will answer me. Do exactly as I say." In the cockpit, Jacob's breathing filled the comms, ragged and panicked. I don't even know who you are. How are you—" "Quiet," Nyasha snapped. "Count your breaths. In, out. Good. Now focus." The console demanded an authentication. Legacy access, pilot off code required. Nyasha hesitated for just a second. Her throat tightened. This was the code tied to her own call sign, her own past life as a Raptor pilot, the one she thought she'd buried with her left arm in Kandahar. She entered it. The screen blinked. Access granted. The tent erupted in gasps. Officers who had fought the unresponsive system for endless minutes now watched as it bent to Nyasha's touch. Jacob's cockpit panels flickered. Gauges came alive. The stick twitched faintly in his grip. His voice cracked in disbelief. "Control! I've got response! Not much, but something!" Nyasha's voice cut back instantly. "That's not control. That's me. And you don't have something, Lieutenant. You have me. Now hold on." She hammered another string of commands. The screen flashed. Manual link initiated. Stabilizers sync possible. "Miller, throttle back to 40%. Don't fight the nose dip yet. Let her ride it." He obeyed, his voice shaking. "Copy, 40% throttle." The jet steadied slightly, its violent wobble easing into a shaky glide. The crowd outside gasped in unison as the Raptor leveled for the first time since the failure. "Good," Nyasha muttered. "Now pitch down 2 degrees. Gentle, not sharp. Guide her." Jacob exhaled, forcing his hands to steady. The nose dipped, then corrected. The jet responded. On the mall, the audience roared with hope. People pointed skyward, tears streaming down faces. Children cheered, veterans saluted. But Nyasha didn't look up. Her eyes stayed glued to the code, her ears tuned to Jacob's breathing. The console beeped again, a cruel reminder. Impact trajectory 0045. Less than a minute until disaster. Nyasha leaned in, typing furiously. The system resisted, glitching, spitting errors. She bared her teeth. "Come on, girl, don't fight me." She slammed the final keystroke. The screen went green. Stabilizers synced. Jacob gasped in his cockpit. She's responding. I can feel her." "That's right. Now treat her like she's alive, because she is."
The Raptor banked cleanly for the first time, smoke still trailing but wings leveling. The mall erupted in cheers. Strangers hugged, some cried out in joy. In the tent, officers erupted too, clapping shoulders, whispering disbelief. Colonel Harris just stared at Nyasha, his jaw tight, his eyes glistening. "You've done it," he whispered. But Nyasha shook her head. Her focus never wavered. "Not yet. We've bought seconds. Now we land him." The console flashed again. Final override. Auth required. Nyasha inhaled, steadying herself. This was the deepest lock, the ultimate link between pilot and machine. It was meant for the one in the cockpit, yet here she was, tethered to a jet she no longer flew. She entered her code. The console paused. The room froze. Then, full link established. Jacob's cockpit lit up. Gauges surged. Panels stabilized. The stick moved freely under his hand. His voice cracked with something like laughter. "Oh my God! I've got her! She's alive!" Nyasha's lips curled into the faintest ghost of a smile, but her voice stayed hard, resolute. "No, Lieutenant. We've got her. Now, let's bring her home." The F-22 steadied, its wings trembling but level, its single engine howling against gravity. For the first time since disaster struck, it looked less like a falling coffin and more like a wounded bird fighting for survival. On the mall, thousands of people gasped in unison. Some clutched each other. Some prayed aloud. A child shouted, "He's flying again!" And for the first time in minutes, hope rippled through the crowd. But inside the cockpit, Jacob Miller wasn't celebrating. Sweat dripped into his eyes. His chest heaved as if every breath might be his last. The stick vibrated violently in his grip, threatening to buck free at any second. "Major, she's still fighting me," he panted. "I don't know if I can hold her." "Yes, you can," Nyasha's voice snapped back over the comms. Her tone cut through the static, sharp as steel. "Throttle down to 20%. Let her glide. Don't fight her. Guide her." Jacob obeyed. The nose dipped. The jet shuddered, but it didn't fall. It held. "Good," Nyasha said, her voice steady. "Now, line her up. Runway 270. You see it?" Through the canopy, Jacob spotted the faint strip of gray asphalt at Andrews Air Force Base, a lifeline stretching across the horizon. "I see it," he whispered. "Then aim for it. That's your salvation."
In the command tent, officers leaned forward, every pair of eyes locked on the big screens. Colonel Harris's jaw tightened. "Come on, kid, don't give up now." The telemetry feeds showed altitude dropping fast, but controlled. Fuel almost gone. One engine screaming on borrowed time. They had one shot. On the mall, silence fell. Tens of thousands of people stood frozen, their eyes skyward. The earlier chaos was gone, replaced by the unbearable weight of anticipation. The nation was holding its breath.
Jacob's hands trembled on the stick. She's too heavy. I don't think you can," Nyasha growled, her voice rising with fire. "Listen to me, Miller. I know what it feels like. I know the fear, the weight, the voice in your head telling you to quit. But you are not quitting. Not today." Her voice softened, steady and sure. "Because I didn't survive Kandahar for you to die here. Now fly." Jacob closed his eyes for half a second, forcing the panic down. When he opened them, his voice was firm. "Copy that. Bringing her down." The Raptor screamed into descent, the runway growing larger, the earth rushing up. Fire crews lined the tarmac, emergency lights flashing red and blue. Medics braced, expecting the worst. "Ease her nose. Good, good," Nyasha commanded. "Drop gear, now." The landing gear clunked open, sparks already flying as the wounded jet groaned in protest. "Rudder left. Easy. Hold it steady." Jacob gritted his teeth, forcing the controls. The Raptor bucked hard, slammed onto the asphalt, sparks bursting from the wheels. The entire jet screeched in agony, smoke pouring from its brakes. The crowd gasped. Some screamed, some covered their eyes. Inside the cockpit, Jacob roared with effort, muscles burning as he fought the skid. "Rudder right, now!" Nyasha barked. He obeyed. The jet jerked dangerously, skidding sideways, then straightened. And then it stopped. Silence. The Raptor sat battered but whole at the end of the runway, smoke curling lazily from its wheels. For a long, breathless second, no one dared to believe it. Then Jacob's voice came through, ragged but alive. "Control, she's down. I'm alive." The mall erupted. Cheers, sobs, shouts shook the earth. Strangers hugged strangers. Children leapt into the air. Veterans saluted with tears streaming down their faces. Flags waved wildly. Voices cried out Jacob's name. On the big screens, Jacob lifted a trembling hand inside the cockpit and gave a shaky salute. The crowd roared louder than the jet itself. Inside the tent, officers clapped shoulders. Some collapsed into chairs with relief. Others wiped at their eyes. Colonel Harris let out a long breath, then turned to Nyasha. "You did it. You brought him home." But Nyasha didn't smile. Her gaze stayed locked on the distant jet, her chest heaving. Her voice was low, steady. "No, he brought himself home. I just gave him the chance." She leaned back from the console, her empty sleeve brushing against it. Around her, men and women cheered, but her eyes carried only the weight of ghosts. Because for Nyasha Wright, survival had never felt like victory.
The Raptor sat smoking at the far end of the runway, fire crews swarming around it. But the jet was whole, and Second Lieutenant Jacob Miller was alive. On the mall, silence lingered for only a heartbeat. Then the crowd erupted. Thunderous cheers, sobs, shouts of joy filled the air. Strangers embraced, children waved flags frantically, veterans saluted with tears in their eyes. What had seemed certain tragedy had become an unforgettable miracle. Inside the command tent, officers clapped shoulders, some collapsed into chairs in exhausted relief. Colonel Harris turned to Nyasha Wright, his voice low and reverent. "Major, you saved him. You saved all of us." Nyasha stood slowly, her chest heaving, her bomber jacket damp with sweat. She shook her head. "No, I gave him a chance. He did the rest." Her eyes lingered on the monitors one last time, the wounded bird on the runway, the young pilot lifting his hand in a shaky salute. Relief filled her chest, but so did the familiar ache of memory. The ghosts of Kandahar were still there. Survival never erased them. When she stepped outside, the crowd had already shifted. Tens of thousands of eyes turned toward her. At first, it was just a ripple. Veterans in the front row stood and saluted. Then soldiers, then civilians, then children on their parents' shoulders, one by one until the entire mall was on its feet, an ocean of raised hands, paying silent honor to the one-armed woman who had stepped forward when no one else could. Nyasha froze, her throat tight. She hadn't been saluted since the day she left the Air Force hospital, broken and forgotten. Now here she was, receiving the recognition she had never asked for, from a nation she thought had moved on without her. But she didn't bask in it. Her eyes fell on a boy near the front, no older than 8, clutching a toy jet. His face was streaked with tears, his small hand raised in salute. Nyasha's lips trembled. Slowly, she raised her right hand and returned the gesture. The crowd erupted again, louder than before, thunder rolling across the mall. And then, just as quietly as she had appeared, Nyasha turned and walked into the sea of people. No spotlight, no fanfare. Just a soldier fading back into anonymity. Because true heroes never stay for the applause.
This story is more than just a thrilling rescue. It's about recognition, sacrifice, and the hidden weight carried by those who serve. Major Nyasha Wright had given everything to her country. The Air Force took her youth, her health, and even her arm in combat. After Kandahar, she faded from the spotlight. A hero no one remembered. Yet when the moment of crisis struck, it wasn't the newest technology or the highest-ranking officers who saved the day. It was the memory, instinct, and courage of a soldier scarred by war, but unwilling to let another fall. The lesson is clear. Experience matters. We live in a world obsessed with upgrades and the new, but wisdom forged in fire
cannot be replaced. Heroes rarely seek recognition. Nyasha didn't step forward for applause. She did it because she couldn't watch another young pilot die the way her comrades had. Sacrifice echoes across generations. The salute she received wasn't just for saving Jacob. It was for every forgotten veteran who still carries unseen battles inside. This story reminds us that real strength isn't always visible. Sometimes it hides in the scars, the silence, and the people who no longer wear uniforms, but still embody the spirit of service.
If this story gripped you as much as it gripped me, don't just scroll away. Hit that like button right now. It tells us you want more stories of courage and sacrifice. Drop a comment below. Do you think Major Nyasha should return to the Air Force after what happened? Or was her silent walk away the truest form of heroism? I'll be reading your answers. And don't forget to share this video because someone you know needs to hear this. Maybe it's a veteran in your family. Maybe it's a friend who's forgotten what real resilience looks like. Finally, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Tomorrow's story is one you won't want to miss. Another moment when an ordinary person became a hero in the blink of an eye. This isn't just storytelling. It's remembering, it's honoring, and it's keeping the flame of sacrifice alive.